Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, there's 2 days till there's actual real live college football on my TV. How do you think it's going?
It's going well. I have set the DVR. I did not, I actually have set the DVR for the Notre Dame game as well, so I'm picking and choosing. The thing about recording stuff of week 0, it's like, well, I'm going to be watching it. Do I need to record it? I kind of just want to record it though, just because that's when you really know it's football season. So yes, I am excited. I do want to mention one thing though, Tom. This happened a couple days ago on the Buckeye Huddle message board. Somebody I'd written something. In fact I do write and post stuff, and I was looking for who this poster was. I was trying to find it in my mentions and I couldn't find it. But this person was like, "Hey, I didn't even know you write. I've only known you guys from the podcast and YouTube." And he mentioned that we were really good at it. And I was like, I'm half like blushing about the podcast thing, and I'm half furious about the writing thing. But as long as people find us, I'm happy. So any way you do it, just do it. But yes, I also write. Tom also has written many, many things in the past. So we're not just like brainless talent. Well,
not just a pretty face. I know you're all thinking it, but no, in fact, not. Yeah, it is. I think there's probably a mixture of people who are like, all right, shut up already about BuckeyeHuddle.com, which is obviously a great website that everyone should join, but everyone knows this already. It's like, no, au contraire, lots of people don't know. I think we've learned a lot over the past, let's say 9 to 12 months that people are not always aware of all of the circumstances involved in, the professional life on the whole, and what we actually do and who we work for and all of that kind of stuff. So, yes, if you get tired of us plugging stuff, just, number one, remember, every podcast is somebody's, there's always someone new joining on, especially this time of year when interest levels go up, so we always end up picking up new listeners. So we do end up talking about that stuff a good bit. But listen, if you all just signed up at BuckeyeHuddle.com today for an annual membership, I mean, listen, we wouldn't have to talk about it anymore. But so this is really, friends, this is on you. So, I think maybe you owe an apology to us, unless you're already a member, in which case, thank you.
Also, if you could leave a 5-star review, as Tom is doing, and of course, subscribe on YouTube and hit that bell and get notified. All of those good things, as Tom deride you for your, well, just everything. But Tom,
we don't ask much, Tony. We really don't.
Just, no. You're right. And frankly, we don't ask enough. But let's start the show after all of that. And there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about. And I want to go back to the defensive backs, which we talked about earlier in the week on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning show. I did not get an opportunity to talk about Lathan Ransom. You were like, the show is running long, we need to go, and you cut my segment out of your show, which is your prerogative. That's fine. That's fine. But I do want to talk about him because this is a guy who I did not expect him to really contribute this year. After he broke his leg in the Rose Bowl. When you see that happen, it's like, well, good luck in, the next season, because you're probably just going to be working your way back, and then it's the following year or whatever when you're fully healthy. But he has worked his way back and is doing everything that everybody else is doing, and really looks to be part of this defense. And he could be a significant part of this defense. We just don't know how yet, Tom, because he's playing all of the different safety positions. And I'm very interested to see how this eventually works. He talked about he's happy that he's actually back playing a high safety, but I don't know that he's always going to be there, because I think he can be a weapon in the slot against certain offenses.
He might be a little bit of a utility infielder this year, where, the broken
utility
leg,
outfielder.
Well, oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yes, could go in fit in all three outfield spots. Yes, he, the broken leg. I'm with you. When he broke that leg, it was on the kick return that got run back for a touchdown by Utah in the Rose Bowl, and he and I think it was Cade Kashersky. There was another player who got hurt on the same play, And it's like, I have a picture of it from, the far end of the field, and there's Utah players celebrating in the far background, and there's two Buckeyes down in the field, and it's like a Civil War photo. Like, oh man, this is not good. And at that moment, it was like, I'm with you. I was like, oh man, that is really a bummer, because as soon as you see them get the air cast out and put them on a card, it's like, oh man, that is really not good. That's probably a 12-month injury, and he's back in 9 months, and then was not 100% at the start of fall camp, but has gotten himself back to the point where he sounds like he's basically 100%. So the injury is not going to keep him off the field for the season. What it might have done is put him a little behind the other guys at those safety spots where, if he was healthy all spring, maybe he is one of those 3 starting safeties. He missed the spring, was not 100% until, pretty recently, if he is officially 100% at this point. So, the opportunity then for him, if he has not won one of the 3 starting jobs, is to just be the second best guy at all 3 spots. Can he do that? Can he be, we talk about the 6th offensive lineman, and who, he's the guy who's coming in. If anyone gets hurt, you're going to shuffle guys around, and this one guy is the next guy who's coming in. Can Lathan Ransom be that guy at the safety spot where, if someone gets hurt, isn't unavailable for whatever reason, can he be that next guy to go out on the field?
Yeah, I think as I have put it forward in this show, or maybe your show, the morning show, I kind of see maybe Lathan Ransom with Court Williams and Tanner McAllister as maybe like this Russian nesting dolls where they're all contained together, but one's like each one is a smaller version of the next. Where Court Williams would maybe play that spot against the biggest teams. Lathan Ransom plays it against the second biggest teams, and then Tanner McAllister plays it against everybody else. But that's just something I'm throwing out there because I think he's a guy that has that versatility. The way that he was able to get back, while everybody else goes home during the offseason here and there, you got 2 weeks off and you go home, you got spring break, you go do this. He stayed on campus and got treatment all the time to be ready for this. And that's the kind of dedication that coaches love, and it's the kind of dedication that pays off. And while he was injured and couldn't do anything physically, he just studied the defense. That way, he wouldn't be as behind as he already was once he got healthy. And I had somebody ask me yesterday, well, why isn't he starting? And it's like you said, Tom, he's behind. Like everybody else has essentially established themselves, even though we've never seen a game of these guys in this defense, but they've been in these spots. Josh Proctor in the boundary, Ronnie Hickman in the field, and Tanner McAllister in the slot 4. This is his 3rd year of starting there. Now, how does all of that evolve? Maybe we'll see. I mean, we have seen some crazy movement at safety for the past, of like the last 5 or 6 years, only 1 year where it was like 2019 was everybody just stayed where they were. Every other year, like 17 and 18 with Isaiah Pryor and Jordan Fuller moving around, and then you've got Jason Wint here, and then last year with Bryson Shaw. Like it was. So I think the movement this year will be by design rather than last year and the years before being by curiosity and necessity. And when curiosity is a necessity, that is a bad thing.
Yeah, it felt like there was a lot more necessity in that than there was necessarily curiosity in a lot of those moves, because you're naming all these names. You didn't say Marcus Hooker's name. Marcus Hooker probably belongs in that conversation as well. But when you think of Isaiah Pryor in 2018, it's like, what do you think of? You think of a 90-something yard touchdown at Penn State and a long, all the long touchdowns against Oregon State to start the year and Maryland and all, it just lots and lots of, you're not moving your guys around because of curiosity, because of good reasons generally is I think or necessity because of good reasons, I guess. So, it's probably not a coincidence that the 1 year that they were really happy with the safety play and they didn't have to move guys around out of necessity, that's also the Ohio State defense that sort of stands out among the last 5 Ohio State defenses in terms of, the offense has been really good every year. The offense has been probably national championship caliber pretty much every year. And the reason they haven't gotten to the national championship a lot of those years is because, well, there's another side of the ball, and it has not always consistently been great. And one of the very consistent problems has been the safety spot. So this is, how many times have we talked this years about Jim Knowles' defense being a safety-driven defense? they are going to sink or swim with the safety play, it feels like. So if you have guys, if you don't have to shuffle guys a whole bunch this year out of necessity, and it just, it can be a little bit strategic and a little bit, like you said, Court Williams against Wisconsin and Iowa, and Lathan Ransom or, someone else against, some of the more passing, the less physically intense offenses, maybe, shall we say, that they might face this year. If it is just purely a schematic thing and not a, this isn't working, let's try something else kind of thing, that's probably a pretty good indication that the season is going the way that I think Ohio State fans are feeling like it might after listening to Jim Knowles talk about things this week.
Yeah, I do view him as the backup at both safety, like both the free safety and the strong safety, because the other guys behind him would either be a true freshman Kai Stokes at free safety, maybe a true freshman Sonny Styles at strong safety, with Court Williams being this hybrid guy that could also be at strong safety at times and could also possibly be at Sam. So they've got 4 guys there that they feel good about, and then they can use 5 guys, including Tanner McAllister, and 6 guys, including Cameron Martinez, honestly, because they really like him. So there's a much better situation going on at safety. Tom, there's also I don't know if it's much better. It's a deeper situation at receiver. And we talked with Brian Hartline on Wednesday, and he said they're definitely going to play more guys than last year. I think part of that is because, like last year, they didn't do it as much because you had some of the most talented guys were freshmen, so they were still learning. And then you had it was top heavy with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave there. Now it feels like everybody is more even and over across like 6 or 7 guys. So there's not this top heavy thing. Although it's still pretty, I don't want to say it's top light. You've got some really good guys, but then you've got these veterans of Cam Babb and Xavier Johnson who have done everything they've asked and have proven they can do stuff in practice. So they've been elevated into this top 7 right now, as we talked about on the morning show yesterday for today, that was posted yesterday, that it's a top 6 of Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Xavier Johnson, Jaden Ballard, Julian Fleming, and Cam Babb will be in there when he's healthy again. So it's going to be 7 guys, and they're going to play them all. And so, Tom, I'm looking forward to this. This is a deeper group than last year. I don't want to say it's better, but they feel better about going deeper.
It does, and you really wonder, is it that yes, there's going to be more guys playing more minutes, more snaps earlier in games this year. That seems like a given. And you really do wonder, is that because the floor of 4 through 6 or 4 through 7 on the roster is so much higher, or is it because 1 through 3 is slightly lower? And slightly lower from last year is school record holder in Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and then 2 guys who went in the top 12 of the NFL draft. So it's not like this is a big slight on guys to say, is Emeka Egbuka not quite as, or Jaden or Julian Fleming not quite as, high of a ceiling as final season Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson. Like that's not exactly a slam on those guys to say that they might not be quite at that level yet. It feels like the answer is probably a little bit of both, that you're kind of meeting in the middle where the top might be a little lower than it was and the bottom is probably higher than it was last year, just because, a lot of the guys we're talking about from, being in that group last year, Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison and Julian Fleming. Fleming has been banged up just kind of constantly. So, he has sort of a little bit of an asterisk on him for last year, and Harrison and Egbuka were freshmen. And you look at where the freshmen are this year, you didn't say any of their names in that top 7, and there's a reason for that. It just takes a little while for guys to get up to speed. So, Caleb Brown, I've been on the Caleb Brown bandwagon for a long time. I know Tony's not really been a believer, but I have been pretty steadfast in that, and I think he's going to get there eventually, but he's a true freshman, so he's not there yet. And again, that's okay. You don't need to be relying on true freshman day one when you have a veteran proven to some degree wide receiver core like they do. So, wide receiver is definitely not a concern for me. And, we'll get into some, some projected numbers here a little bit later for these wide receivers. But, it feels like this should be a very explosive Ohio State wide receiver unit, but I don't know numbers-wise, with as much as they're potentially going to be spreading the ball around, if you're going to see, outrageous school record-shattering numbers out of some of these guys, just because you are potentially, splitting those reps 6 or even 7 ways at some point.
At some point, we're going to have to go on the record with our statistical projections, just because it's a fun exercise that nobody will remember how wrong we are, which are the best kinds of exercises, frankly, in my opinion. One of the things that the receivers talked about is that they can all play any position. So you've got this positionless thing that will allow Emeka Egbuka and Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Xavier Johnson to play together. These guys have worked in the slot. Like last year, Egbuka and Jaxon Smith-Njigba both playing the same spot. There was this fear like, well, you've got to move one of them to another position so that you can get them on the field this year. And it's, well, what you do is everybody knows every position, and then you can put anybody in. That's what Brian Hartline talked about. The advantage is, the versatility is a huge advantage because he can have anybody standing next to him and send him in for anybody else. And you're not pigeonholed where, like, I'd like to send Jaden Ballard in right now, but Julian Fleming is dominating, so now I have no use for Jaden Ballard. Like, well, you're kind of shortchanging that guy. So by teaching them all, and the fact that, like, you can go ahead and try to do it. You can teach them, but if they don't learn it and they don't pick it up, then what have you done? But, he said they've done it. They're there, and he can send anybody in. And as I always try to remind people, Marvin Harrison caught a touchdown in the Rose Bowl out of the slot last year. So, Chris Olave, how many of his touchdowns came from just motioning into the slot, and then, some post route down the middle of the field? It's like these guys all know all of the ins and outs. So it gives them a great advantage. It allows them, Tom, to find matchups that they can make great use of.
Yeah, and I think that was the point I was going to make, was like, yeah, it's great in terms of being able to shuffle guys around. And, it's not like everyone's going to play 33.33333% of the time at X and H and Z. Like, you're going to have, there are going to be guys who are slot receivers, but they also can go outside. The outside guys can also go inside from time to time. It does give you some flexibility in terms of, like, hey, one guy is hurt and his backup is the 6th of those 6 guys. So I would really like to play the 4th best guy, but he doesn't play at that position. Like, it eliminates that kind of issue. It also just schematically, like you said, lets you set up matchups. We saw last year, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, against a slot corner for Utah, who was a running back who just kind of got thrown into it. It was like, guess what? Ohio State was aware of that matchup. Ohio State was able to isolate that matchup, and Ohio State took advantage of that matchup to the tune of 347 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns, which is a lot if you are new to football for one game, for a month for some guys. That was a pretty good 60 minutes of work for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You saw that. I mean, you mentioned Chris Olave earlier. 2018, the Michigan game. How often was that Chris Olave in the slot isolated against Brandon Watson? Like, Michigan had 3 corners. Well, guess what? There was a little bit of a drop off to the 3rd guy, and that 3rd guy got picked on a lot during that game. Paris Campbell. You saw. I mean, that you can find a matchup like that and take advantage of it. It also makes you less predictable. You have if the team, if the opponent always knows, well, Marvin Harrison is always going to be here, they can design a defense to try and take Marvin Harrison away if that's what they want to do. If you're moving Marvin Harrison around a little bit, well, then now that makes that a little bit more difficult for them as well. So there's a lot of advantages to that, but you don't get, when we say positionless, this does not mean that, these guys are just going to be constantly, there's going to be no pattern at all to it. It's all going to be done randomly. It's like, no, it's going to be done strategically, not randomly.
Yeah, Brian Hartline isn't going to be held to a depth chart. Like, well, his position says X, and so I can only put him at X. It's not like, well, the card says Moops. You can only put him at Moops. Sorry, you cannot play Moors. You can only play Moops. Like, this freedom and the ability to put guys wherever you need them because they have worked and they have studied and they have prepared and this is what they all want, because they all want to play. So the best way to make that happen is to be able to play more than one position. They've basically tripled their odds, their chances, their snaps snap availability, basically.
2022 Ohio State football. Moops, I did it again.
I mean, writes itself.
Pretty much does.
The title. Then you have to write the rest. But the title. But really, once you get the title, the rest just happens. Tom, you mentioned projections. And so Bet Online has released some statistical projections. And we can basically just talk about the Ohio State guys here. With CJ Stroud, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and TreVeyon Henderson, they've put out their projections and these over-unders basically type of thing. The CJ Stroud passing yards in the regular season, over-under is 4,500. I don't know that you need the half in there, but of course, if he ends up 4,000, I guess you technically do, but it's a very specific. Now, in order to go over, he would have to throw for 333.4 yards per game. And you look at last year, he threw, what was it, like 38-62 you put here in the rundown. That's 11 games. However, he had to throw for a lot against Michigan and against Oregon, games where the defense didn't necessarily do their jobs. And I think this year the defense is going to do a better job of not needing so many points from the offense. However, if you look at what CJ Stroud did against Michigan State and did against Purdue, throwing for over 400 yards in those games, and basically, 5 quarters of play total, he will also do that against, games where the Ohio State defense plays well. But I am going under. Seems weird to say because you're talking like 330 yards passing a game, which he threw for 385 or something last year over the course of the season. But I also think they're going to run the ball better, Tom. And and you lose Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. There has to be some sort of a drop off. I'm going under. What say you,
Tony? Shameful. You're a hater, a doubter. It's really pretty disgusting. I'm sure our audience right now is thinking, listen, Tom is the one who's supposed to be the hater and constantly disappointing the hopeful Ohio State fans. I also am going under.
Oh,
for all the same reasons you laid out. I mean, this to me feels like the transition from the 2018 season to 2019 season. And, the 2021 to 2022 season, it feels like you're kind of shaping up to be that kind of season where, think about 2018. You had lots of, trouble running the ball in short yardage situations. The interior of the offensive line was not great in terms of running the ball. The defense was giving up a lot of points. The offense had to, that was the big Dwayne Haskins season where it was just, he was winging it all over the place because they had to outscore teams. You go to 2019, it was still an incredible offense. It was an explosive offense, but J.K. Dobbins is running for 2,000 yards. I'm not saying TreVeyon Henderson is going to run for 2,000 yards, but all of us, J.K. Dobbins, the running game was so much better in 19 than it was in 18. The defense was so much better in 19 than it was in 18, which meant you didn't have so much pressure on the offense, on the passing offense. They didn't have to put up everything through the air, yardage-wise, touchdown-wise. You could get guys out. You could get Justin Fields out of games a little earlier than you could with Dwayne Haskins. You weren't behind like they were against Purdue, where, Dwayne Haskins threw 73 passes, I think, against Purdue in 2018. That was essentially and Haskins had 499 yards against Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. That was essentially what CJ Stroud had to do last year in the Rose Bowl, 573 yards, I think, where, they're down whatever it was, 14-0 and 21-7 or whatever the score was in the first half, and they just had to kind of battle back, and they couldn't really run the ball, and it was just throw. I don't think they're going to have that kind of game this year. So, yeah, I'm going under on the yardage. I did think it was really interesting that CJ Stroud's passing yards for the 2022 regular season was 4,500. Caleb Williams, his touchdown and interception numbers from USC are essentially the same as CJ Stroud's, but his yardage number was 600 lower. Bryce Young's touchdown number was a little higher. His interception number was a little lower, but his passing yardage total was 200 yards short of what the projected CJ Stroud line was. So I think that Stroud number is it feels high. And it just feels like this team is not going to necessarily need to, it's going to be a little more multidimensional and also be able to play better defense. All of that points to lower passing totals.
Yeah, last year, Ohio State produced 561 yards of total offense per game. I think that number probably comes down a little because they'll run it more. When you run it more, you have smaller chunks. So I'm thinking maybe like 540, 550, something like that, maybe. And then if they're rushing for 220 yards a game.
What are they passing for 220 yards a game? Because Tony, man, you're getting me excited. First bold prediction shows next Wednesday.
If you're rushing for 219 yards a game, eventually, like where does the extra passing yard? Where do the extra passing yards come from? But will I be shocked if it happens? No. Here's one, Tom. The over/under for CJ Stroud touchdown passes in the regular season is 35.5. He had 38 last year. Again, in the regular season, 11 games. I'm going over on this one because they can throw the ball from the 1 yard line and they have no problem doing it. They will throw the ball inside the 10. When you've got Marvin Harrison, when you've got Jaxon Smith-Njigba who can go out of the back of the end zone and come back in, stuff like that. You got these jet sweep tosses. I'm going over because I also think Ryan Day wants to allow CJ Stroud to put on a show, and when you win the Heisman as the quarterback, that helps recruiting. So I think there's going to be some incentive to get quite a few of these like six touchdown passes in a game, and he may have a few of those this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a question as to how much that's really going to factor into it. And, if you ask Ryan Day, he'll say he's not paying attention to it at all. I mean, I think sometimes that's true. Like Dwayne Haskins throwing for 499 yards, and I think getting pulled out of the game, or they didn't throw the ball after that. And it was like, don't you know what? Do you know what number comes after 499? Because it's a pretty significant round one. But they, at that point, coaches don't care. They just want to win the game. I don't see them throwing the ball from the 1 because I think they're going to be able to run the ball in from the 1 yard line in a way they just kind of couldn't for long stretches last year. But you can throw the ball from the 6 yard line. You can throw the ball from the 10 yard line. You can also throw the ball from the 17 or 34 yard lines and score some longer touchdowns, which is something that I think they also will probably do from time to time. Marvin Harrison seems like such a red zone threat. Like Marvin Harrison, Jaxon Smith-Njigba was asked on Wednesday night about, do you know what the single season touchdown record was? The answer was 17 by Terry Glenn in 1995. And, he was asked, are you going to try and make a run at breaking that? And he said, he didn't know if he was, but someone's going to break it. And it feels like, if someone on this team is going to break it, it feels like maybe that's Marvin Harrison, like just big dude now listed at 6'4", go up and get it, freakishly athletic, just go up and get it, very elusive, beat your guy off the line. It feels like he's the one who's maybe going to be more likely to break that single season touchdown record. And I don't think he's, better than 50-50 to do it or anything like that. But this is my long-winded way of saying, the yardage was a very easy under for me. This is much closer. I think, they're probably, I don't think they're throwing for, 40-something touchdowns necessarily this season with CJ Stroud. I'm going to go over, but only slightly over. I think you could hit the under on the yardage thing comfortably. I think the over is going to be real close and kind of at Ryan Day's discretion more than anything that the opposing defense does.
Yeah, the great thing about gambling, you only have to go slightly over the over to win it. That's the fun thing. I mean, all we're asking is 3 touchdowns per game, and you win. And I think, do you think he has more games of 4 touchdown passes than 2?
That's a good question, and
I know I didn't want to answer it. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, it feels like it's about the same. It feels like he's got like 3 games of each, and then he's kind of about 3 on average. And the question to me is more, is there a game where they just, it's Arkansas State and they really just want to run the ball, or they want to get Kyle McCord in the game in the middle of the second quarter and really get Kyle McCord some real serious run? I don't. Yeah, and you know what? It feels like they might, if Ryan Day is thinking about it, there might be a game where you're trying to put up 7 touchdowns to break the single game Ohio State passing record because it's been 6 and it's been tied and it's been tied and it's been tied and it's been tied. 7 touchdowns. You don't have the repeat Heisman winner very often, so it feels like it's CJ Stroud's Heisman to win almost. unless Jahmyr Gibbs goes nuts or something like that. So, yeah, I'm going over because I think, you're going to have as many or more 4-touchdown performances as 2-touchdown performances, I guess.
Let's move to Jaxon Smith-Njigba. The over-under on regular season receptions is 89.5. He had 80 last year in the regular season. He had 2 games of just 2 catches, including the season opener, and then a game against Rutgers where he only had 2 catches. But he had 3 games of over 10 or more receptions in the regular season. 89 is a lot, and I'm going under that just because I think he had lightning in a bottle in the Nebraska game type of thing, and I don't know how many 15-catch, 10-catch games he's going to have this year. I think the fact that you can have 7 catches a game over 12 games and be under, I'm staying away. If anything, I'm taking the under on that. I don't see 90 catches in 12 games with the way they're planning to maybe spread the ball around a little more.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's a very, very high number. It's 7.4 catches per game to just push that bet, and that just seems like that seems just like a lot of catches, because you're going to have a week where, hey, he's some very minor something, and they're just going to sit him because they're, favored by 38 points, or he's going to play very sparingly and they're going to get some of the other guys, a lot of run. He's not going to have 7 catches against Arkansas State. He's not going to have 7 catches against Toledo, probably. Probably not against Rutgers. You're going to, you're going to be spreading the ball around a little more. That is a huge number. 89.5 is basically over under. He breaks the Ohio State single season record for receptions. What was the old was it KJ Hill or Paris Campbell?
Paris Campbell.
Paris Campbell's like 90. Yeah, I think it was 90 or 91. So, essentially to win this bet, you're betting he will definitely break the old Ohio State record that he just broke last year, but that just seems like a lot. And you can't really rely on 15 catches a game, and he had multiple 15-catch games last season. If he does that again, sure, then he's a third of the way there in just 2 games, but it just doesn't feel like that's real likely to happen. It just feels like he might have a better season this year, but not have statistically the season he had a year ago, kind of in the same way we're talking about with CJ Stroud.
The over-under on receiving yards this season is 1,200.5, so he would have to average 100.34 yards per game this season to hit that or whatever. I think 100 yards a game seems very doable. That's still putting him around 80 catches or so, but like I said, I just don't think he's going to have 90, so I'm going over on that one, because 100 yards a game just does not sound like he was there last year. They almost had 3 guys doing it last year, so I'm pretty confident they can have at least one doing it this year.
Yeah, 1,200 is, I think, a reasonable number for him to hit. This is really disappointing because I thought for sure we'd be on the opposite sides of some of these, but it has been very disappointingly agreeable this morning so far. That is not what this show is about. This show is about bickering. Tony, how could you consider 1,200 yards a bold line to set? I say 1,400. Does he go over that? There's the real question.
How long would Vegas stay in business if their thing was just every line has to be bold? You can't have middle of the road stuff. It just has to be bold.
Not very long. It feels like our experience with that is an indication that it is somewhat predictable that you can fade the bold prediction, and you'll probably end up coming out okay more often than not. So yeah, it is 1,200. He had 1,259 in the 2021 regular season. That does not include the Rose Bowl game. So you take out the best game he had last year. He had a couple games with just a couple catches, and he still hit that number. That one feels like, okay, he's going to be a bigger part of the offense early in the season than he was like this time a year ago. I think I think over there is probably a good bet.
I'm still thinking about Vegas setting lines based on bold predictions, and you know how like you would then go to Las Vegas and you'd be like, they didn't build these shanty houses by being right all the time. Like they didn't build these giant buildings by being wrong. It's like, well, now they wouldn't last long. I agree with you there. We can go quickly. Touchdowns, 10.5 for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, receiving touchdowns. So basically, to win this, you're looking at 1 a game. There's going to be some times where he has 2, probably maybe a game where he has 3, but some games where he has 0. But just being at 10 over 12 games, I would probably honestly stay away from this one. I don't have a good feeling one way or the other. I don't have as good a feeling as I have on the others on this one. So this might be he might have exactly 10.5 catches this year.
I will bet. I'll tell you what. If you take 10.5, I will take the field on number of touchdown receptions for him this season. Whatever stakes you want on that one, we can put on that. He only had 6 last year. That's the thing that kind of throws me on this is 10.5 doesn't seem like that many, and you go, okay, well, they don't have Olave and they don't have Wilson, and think about how many touchdowns those guys caught. So he's, CJ Stroud's got to throw him to someone, and Marvin Harrison's going to take a decent number. But 6 last year, that just was not his role really on the team for the most part. He was not the guy who, when it was 3rd and goal from the 4, they were necessarily looking for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. They were looking for someone else, and it feels like they're probably looking for someone else here. So I would tend towards the under on this one, but I don't. Yeah, this is not one that I would have a real strong opinion on. There's several other ones we've talked about that I would have much stronger opinions on than this one.
I'm just concerned about going under on Jaxon Smith-Njigba predictions twice, 2 out of 3 times. I will go once under, once over, and then I will abstain so that I don't get burnt by all of that. TreVeyon Henderson rushing yards in 2022. Over under is 1,100.5. I think he rushes for at least 90 yards a game. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's over 100 yards a game, especially if they're going to be more dedicated to the running game. So I would have him over on this one, and he was at 1,164 yards last year. That's with 1 carry for 2 yards against Minnesota. And so, yeah, I feel pretty good about that going over this year.
This is one of the easier overs to me. He just, like you said, he went over this number last year, and that was a year when we talked about the fact that they couldn't really run the ball all that much, which meant, you couldn't run the ball in short yardage situations, which meant you were just throwing it a lot more, which meant not only did he not get the 3 yards a pop in short yardage kind of situations, he also didn't have the opportunity. That's just fewer opportunities to break 1 tackle and then turn 4 yards into 40 yards. This feels to me, especially with no Evan Pryor, you've got a shallower running back room this year. Mayan Williams is going to get carries, but is Mayan Williams going to get 20 carries a game? Probably not. 15 to 20 carries a game for TreVeyon Henderson seems like a number that is not crazy. And, if he's averaging 20, let's say we're going to make the math real easy. 20 carries, 12 games, that's 240 carries. That's less than 5 yards a carry. I mean, so even if he's a little under that, if he's averaging 5 yards a carry, and 5.5 yards a carry, maybe even 6 yards a carry for him this year seems very realistic. I think if he's healthy, he's hitting that number without much stress.
Yeah, even if he averages 6 yards a carry, I mean, it's 17 carries, 15 carries. I think he's going to be able to get there. Now, here's one the rushing touchdowns for him, 13.5. Mayan Williams said something this fall that he is going to be the short yardage guy, which also means to me like the goal line guy. So you could have a touchdown vulture situation here. So keep that in mind as you try to decide over under on 13.5. Although I still think I'm going over because there's going to be some long ones. There's going to be, he's not going to always be taken out of the game in favor of Mayan Williams inside the 5. So I feel comfortable enough to say over 13.5 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns in the regular season.
Yeah, unless Mayan Williams turns into Pete Johnson, I don't think he's stealing that many touchdowns away from TreVeyon Henderson. And 13.5, it's 1 touchdown a game and then a couple games where you're getting 2. And there's going to be a game when he gets 3 and there's going to be a game where he gets 0. But, I don't think he's going way over 13.5, but he could go, I think it's much more likely he ends up with 15 or 16 touchdowns than like 9 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. That seems more likely to me. So yeah, I'm going over that number.
And then Tom, last thing, there's college football this weekend. I will be watching Nebraska Northwestern. That starts at 12:30 on Fox. The line is down to like 13 and a half for Nebraska. I think that it was at some point like 14, 15, something like that, and it maybe has been bet down a little bit. And then Wyoming and Illinois after that on Big Ten Network, and then maybe some, I don't know, watch Drake May at North Carolina against Florida A&M. Watch some Florida State at 5 to see how good they are. These are all ACC Network games that you may not be able to find. But then, of course, the game we're all waiting for, Tom, probably Vanderbilt at Hawaii at 10:30. Is that right?
Vanderbilt at Hawaii is going to be kind of an interesting one in a way. I mean, Hawaii, like, I don't know that people understand exactly how bad Hawaii is going to be this year. Like, I think you have a vision in your head of like, oh, it's the fun team you watch late at night, and they always go 7-5 and play in their bowl game, and they're like, no, Hawaii is kind of a mess right now. Todd Graham left the Hawaii program in, I think it's safe to say, left it in disgrace last year. They had hearings in the state Senate about his mistreatment of players. They had just an absolute parade of guys in the transfer portal leaving the program, kind of a mess. Timmy Chang, who you may remember from NCAA football games quite a while ago, longtime NCAA career passing yardage record holder at Hawaii. He is taking over as the head coach. Very young, very energetic guy. I follow him on Twitter. They are doing all sorts of team building stuff and really trying to start building the culture. But man, it is going to be a couple of years before Hawaii can dig out of the hole. All of which is to say, it would be extremely funny if Vanderbilt lost that game somehow. Vanderbilt last year, if you remember, in Clark Lee's first year, lost their season opener at home against East Tennessee State, 23-3. Lost by 20 points to a not particularly good FCS team at home. Does it just mean more Tony? Well, we're out of time. But yes, this is going to be probably a Vanderbilt win. Hawaii is going to be kind of a mess. This is like maybe a 2-10 kind of Hawaii season. But yeah, it is always good to have Hawaii football back in our lives. R.I.P. Robert Cacallo.
Yeah. A bunch of us are making picks with Mark Rogers. We did it last year. I did okay. I didn't do great. But I'm taking Vanderbilt, laying the points, 8 points in that one. I am taking Illinois and laying the 11 points against Wyoming. That's at home. Illinois should be able to win like 14-3, 17-6, something, 20-6. I feel okay about that one. I'm taking Nebraska to win, but I'm taking Northwestern with the line. That's 13.5. I think I may have gotten it at like 14 or something like that. That just feels like Nebraska. I can't believe I'm going to say Nebraska wins, but it's ugly because that's what Northwestern does. How do you feel about that game?
It feels like, well, first of all, this is about as must-win of an opening week game as you have ever had for a team. If Scott Frost loses that game, that is going to be very, very bad news for him. This does not seem like this is going to be a good Northwestern team. Like we talk about, the good Iowa team and the bad Iowa team, and the difference is like, well, some of them go to the Citrus Bowl and some of them go to the Outback Bowl, and that's the difference between the good Iowa team and the bad Iowa team. The good Northwestern team goes to the Big Ten championship game. The bad Northwestern team is unwatchable garbage that goes 3-9 and scores 13 points a game. This feels like you're much closer to the bad end of the spectrum on the Northwestern team. So I don't, if Nebraska can score if Nebraska can put up in the mid to high 20s, they're going to win this game probably by 10 points. So, I think I'm going to lay the 14 with the the more words I say, the more uncomfortable I get. All right, or I can back a Northwestern team I don't believe in. Like, here's the fun thing, kids. You don't actually need to bet on all the games. And this is one where it's just like, I don't like either of my choices. What is behind door number 3? Because I don't really like either of my choices on this one. I do think Nebraska wins. Just like, man, first game, new quarterback, playing overseas. Like, I don't love it. But the talent level from Nebraska is so much better, and you think they would probably have all the special teams nonsense sorted out by this point, which should give them, that's probably worth at least 3 points right there. So, if someone, put a gun to my head and made me pick someone, I would pick Nebraska, but I don't really feel particularly good about either one.
Northwestern is going there looking at this. This is a fun, awesome experience. Pat Fitzgerald is happy-go-lucky. The team is, let's go look at culture. Let's go do this. Let's just have a good time. Nebraska is probably so clenched. Like, this is the most important thing that has ever happened. And you're far from home. And maybe, this is where we all just come together and it's us against the world. And, I think there's some truth to it because there's a lot of pressure on them. And I just wonder how much they feel it. And I think Scott Frost feels it, but he can't show it. But all he does is show how much the pressure is on him because he has no emotions, and it just looks like he's trying to hide stuff. So it's just an interesting clash of moods in that one, which will be fun to watch. And maybe Nebraska goes up like 21-0, and everything just feels great. But then the comeback starts, and you're like, oh no.
Oh no, Nebraska, not like this. No. I did like the kind of surprising low-key home field advantage that Nebraska has. I'm not sure if you saw this on Twitter. When you are a new driver in Ireland, you have to have a red N sticker for novice that you put on the car, and you can print out a piece of paper, but they sell these like N stickers that are identical to the Nebraska helmet N. So, all these people are driving around Ireland with what looks like Nebraska N's on their cars. And someone was saying, like, they're just picturing these Nebraska players going, wow, there are a lot of Cornhusker fans here. All right. I think it was Roger Sherman, who's at Roger, Rodger, who tweeted that out earlier this week. But yes, thought that was quite amusing. One of those really fun, like, overlaps of culture that you would never have learned about if not for weird games like this.
It would be interesting if Ohio State goes somewhere where, for whatever reason, there's OH stickers, and they just yell OH at everybody, and people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Please stop yelling at me. That would be tremendously fun. So that will do it, unless you have anything else, Tom.
We're good. Let's, we'll probably do a live show before then, but let's watch some football this weekend.
Let's watch some football this weekend. So thank you all for joining us. Remember, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Give it a try. If you are already a member, thank you very much. If you're not yet a member, just come check us out. We're there hanging out, producing content, and just having a good old time talking Buckeye football and Buckeye basketball and then everything in between. So thank you all for joining us, and we will talk to you guys later.